Welcome to season 2 of CEAT Rock and Roll, and we have episode 3 for you. And it was the first week of the season, and what a stunning beginning to this weekend's action it was. It was absolutely outstanding. Some brilliant tries that were scored, which I'm sure you watched. But we'll be analyzing all that action with my mate Abdullah Yusuf and a few very special guests coming onto the show as well. We're looking forward to Sri Lanka's match against South Korea also, and we will have the national captain in studio with us when Tharinda Ratwatha gets in here as well. So this is going to be a fantastic show. Lock it in, and if you want that smooth, quiet ride, CEAT radials are built for it. With shock-absorbing sidewalls and that wet road grip that you need, trust me, you and your family will feel the difference. If you'll feel the difference also in the rugby analysis, if you stay tuned.
CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
Hearts racing fast, we feel alive. For miles and miles, let your spirit fly. There's no turning back, the road is yours.
German-engineered tyres for Sri Lankan roads. CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
On CEAT Rock and Roll, we're looking at the In Control segment where we look back at who was in complete control. As you know, if you have a pair of CEAT tyres, you don't want two of those tyres to be good or just one of those tyres to be good. You want CEAT total control. So we're looking back at the weekend's action and seeing which team was in complete control of the game. Abdullah, we had moments where one team was in control. We had teams when the other team came back and regained control. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you thought were the fixtures where that happened?
Yes, probably a couple of fixtures come to mind. I'd probably take the Royal Thurston game. I thought Royal from the get-go throughout the 70 minutes, they were in absolute control. There was at no point of the game where they looked as if they were under pressure. So it was a pretty much complete performance, as we discussed earlier, especially with regard to backs. And also the other performance was probably by Wesley. I thought over a 70-minute period, the amount of pressure they managed to consistently put on Science enabled them to execute and build up that kind of score. So from that aspect, it was probably those two games where I thought Royal and Wesley were in total control.
And the highest score of the week, of course, Royal running up against their Thurston College neighbours. So 74 points to 15, and that's what we thought was our most in control team of this week. So we'll look at some of those tries that Royal scored, and it's good to see from a Royalist point of view, Abdullah. A lot of the Royal fans were complaining over the last few years that they were just scoring tries from their rolling maul and not doing enough creativity at the back, but it looks like all that has changed this time.
Yes, it's yet the start though, but I thought it was a good first step. I thought the back three was outstanding, and a couple of those players were on the bench. I think the Royal skipper as well as Yuan Pathirana did not start the game. So it shows an area of the game where Royal have a little bit of depth, and it's something which they will want to grow.
So that's the kind of speed, and speed is of course nothing without control. So that's your CEAT In Control segment for this week, looking ahead to next week's segment.
Hearts racing fast, we feel alive. For miles and miles, let your spirit fly. There's no turning back, the road is yours.
German-engineered tyres for Sri Lankan roads. CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
CEAT Rock and Roll, and we're looking back at last week's action. It was the first week of schools rugby, and everybody's been eagerly anticipating this first week to see exactly what's going to happen after the dialogue knockout tournaments, and Isipatana running away with that win as well. So everyone's been waiting to see what the knockout tournament had and how will it impact the schools league tournament. And the first week was the first chance that we had to look at what's going to happen. Joining me, Abdullah Yusuf, to look back at last week's games. Abdullah, an interesting set of games, some a little closer than we expected, a couple of blowouts, not too many, but all in all a great start to the season.
Yes, a very good start indeed, Shanaka, and it was pretty obvious that some of the teams are yet pretty much trying to figure out what their best combinations are, while other teams definitely need to get their best teams out front, because they knew they were up against equally good teams. So it was very interesting to see how the teams balanced their outfits at the start of the season. And as we'll discuss further, it was pretty obvious that the more established teams are the ones that probably got what they needed out of this first week.
Yes, certainly did, and they want their bonus points, they want their 4 tries, they want to make sure that they remain injury free. So let's look at the first match that we had. That was on Friday, and this was Thurston playing Royal, Abdullah. Fairly comprehensive performance. We spoke about it earlier on the show as well, but what Coach Leuke will be a little upset about maybe is the 15 points they conceded.
Yes, that's right. I thought offensively they were very good, especially the Royal back three. I thought they were outstanding. They definitely moved the ball much more than they normally do. Probably it's the way they'll want to approach the game this season. But as you very correctly said, the 2 tries they conceded, it'll probably what would upset them, and especially that last try where the rolling ball, which is generally the forte of Royal Thurston, gave Royal a little bit of their own medicine. So it's something which they will definitely need to look at.
So one of the few games that was really one-sided over the first week, and this was on our Friday game. And let's move on to our next match that was also on Friday. We had Zahira taking on Dharmaraja, and Zahira semi-finalists of the knockout tournament, Abdullah. They flattered to deceive in that semi-final game, but looks like coming into the league tournament, they found a little bit of rhythm, and against Dharmaraja, I expected this game to be closer, but Dharmaraja not doing the business.
Yes, it was close until about half-time. But then after that, I think Zahira just ran away with it. Zahira, they met the Dharmaraja in the knockout pre-quarterfinals as well. So they probably brought that confidence with the results they got from that as well, and eventually ending up with a pretty comfortable victory. But just watch out for this Zahira team. In this Group B, I think they are a team that definitely can cause some flutters to the top 2 teams.
Yes, certainly. We don't even know what those top 2 teams are going to be, because Isipatana is in that group. St. Thomas's and Kingswood went right down to the wire, and then of course Zahira might be the dark horses in that group to take number 2. It's still early doors, but let's see how it goes. Our next match was Trinity versus Sri Sumangala, and of course Sumangala coming out of the blocks flying, and this came up in Kandy. Trinity would have thought themselves, I know a lot of the WhatsApp groups that Trinity boys were on were quite nervous at halftime, Abdullah, but in the end coming through, and just like the established teams do, the experienced teams do, the better conditioned teams do, they pull away in the last quarter.
Yes, it was 20 points to 15 at halftime, and I'm sure Trinity at that stage would have been a little bit nervous, but as you correctly said, Shanak, eventually that experience, the better conditioning, all that came into play, and eventually running out with a relatively comfortable victory against their hometown rivals.
And you have to wonder about the coaching as well, because a lot of these coaches know it's going to be a long season, and whether they're going to we're going to take some of these matches as maybe experimental matches just to make sure they prepare for injury, to make sure that their bench gets game time, and that's what we're going to find also in these first couple of rounds.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think in Trinity's case, as well as previously when we were talking about Royal, it was pretty much the same case as well. Yeah. Because it's just not keeping your bench ready in case of injuries, which is inevitable in such a long season. So coaches probably have that at the back of their mind as well, and they'd want to give these players as much opportunities in these kind of games. So in the eventuality that they are needed during the latter part of the season, they will be game ready.
Yep, absolutely. And looking at our next match, that moving on to Saturday, we had DS Serenayaka taking on St. Anthony's, and St. Anthony's improving quite dramatically from the team that we saw against Trinity in the pre-quarterfinals of the knockout tournament, Abdullah, and DS going a little bit further in that tournament. You expected them to make easy weather of St. Anthony's, but the Antonians scoring a few good tries as well and looking pretty good for the season.
Yeah, that's right. Though I think they'd probably be a bit disappointed being the hosts in Kandy, that they would have liked to have pulled this game off. But DSN and I, season on season, they just seem to be accumulating that experience. They seem very comfortable in this A division environment now, and they're going on to pull out these wins, which is great for them. And I think they'll be thrilled the fact that they've gone up to Kandy and got this result.
The Eagles won't be too upset though, because they did score a couple of good tries, and Salia Kumara's coaching means that teams keep improving, and it's nice to see these good backline players emerging from the Antonians as well. So they're going to be a team to watch out for in their group as well as things go along. Our next match that we have on the cards, St. Peter's, the defending champions, under a little bit of a cloud, playing without quite a few of their established players, Abdullah, but Ananda really taking the game to them.
Yeah, especially I thought the Ananda 8 was very impressive against the Peterites. They definitely gave a real run to the defending champions, and that scoreline probably doesn't indicate how close that game was. Again, it's just that experience of the big match that eventually came out, and the Peterite three quarters I thought were outstanding, and Ananda on their part, they just couldn't get that three-quarter defense in line in place. They missed far too many one-on-one tackles, and if they had managed to make those tackles, who knows what could have been, because I thought the Ananda 8 pretty much outplayed the St. Peter's forwards. But it's just the fact that they just didn't have anything beyond that to cause problems to the Peterite defense, which probably resulted in this score. And Peterites, they have just some wonderful line breakers in their three quarters, and that's what proved to be the difference in the end.
Yes, some individual skill in that backline, people who can break one-on-one tackles, like Abdullah said. But Ananda will need to go back and decide what their game plan is going to be as this season goes on, because they do have a formidable 8. We spoke about this last week on the show as well, saying this big Ananda team is going to be a challenge, but whether they have the optimal game plan for it, we'll wait and see as the season wears on. Then, of course, we had an absolute nail-biter up in Mount Lavinia. We had St. Thomas's taking on Kingswood, leading comfortably at one point by 29 points to 14, and then Kingswood just came firing back. And you've got to say, Kingswood also have a really nice set of three quarters, Abdullah. Some daring runners who are willing to take people on and able to break tackles. So it was a real shame for them that they couldn't come back. It was almost a game that they deserved to win in the end.
Yes, again, they'll be really disappointed, because even if you go back to that pre-quarter final against Royal, they were leading until the very last moment, where Royal just managed to get over the line and make it through to that quarter final. But I'm really pleased to see Kingswood the way they have played, because the last 2 or 3 years has been really tough for them. They went down to B division, they came up, they were hardly able to get a win. But this season they just seem to have accumulated enough experience. They managed to put a squad together that they can definitely trouble the top teams. And if they can get a couple of games against the better teams up in Kandy, who knows what they can do. So overall, Kingswood will be disappointed with the result, but I think with regard to the performance, it will definitely give them confidence moving ahead.
Yes, it certainly will, and I think what St. Thomas has learnt the hard way over the weekend, and what a lot of teams and coaches will take away from this game, is that there are no easy games. That's something that I think all these squads need to understand. Even the smaller teams are making sure that they come there to beat you in your home ground. There's a real hunger among these small teams to make sure that it counts, and although St. Thomas has walked away with their 4 tries and the bonus point win, Kingswood walked away with their heads held high as well from Mount Lavinia. Moving on to Havelock Park, where we had Wesley taking on Science. Science still suffering from a lot of injury blows, Abdullah, and they were the team I thought that had not improved too much from the pre-quarterfinals of the Dialogue Knockout Tournament. The team that played St. Thomas's in that first match hadn't really improved over the last month or so, and Wesley having a fairly easy run in.
Yeah, that's right. But again, you have to give a lot of credit to Wesley. I think they have got some wonderful game breakers in their lineup, and I dare say that, to me, they definitely look a team that can vie for that the league tournament as a whole, because they definitely got the three quarters. They've got some good forwards. I think we just discussed about it earlier, just that if they can get a little bit of structure into their game, they can definitely cause teams a lot of problems. So they're definitely an outfit to look out for. Science on their part, yes, they'll be pretty disappointed, especially just looking at the scoreboard. But let's just hope that they manage to sort their injury woes out, and as the season goes. They'll probably be able to play against teams of similar ability and probably notch up a few wins.
Yes, heavily reliant, of course, on their skipper Dilruwan Pereira, who's nursing a heavily strapped knee. So we'll wait and see how things work out for him. Hopefully he recovers and takes science along with him. So moving on to the closest game of the weekend, we had Vidyartha hosting St. Joseph's up in Kandy, and that was a nail biter, Abdullah. The Tigers coming back here. I was talking last week about St. Joseph's, and I said they seemed like a nice, relaxed side who knew what they were about and knew what to expect from themselves. But they went up there, they thought the game was won, but Vidyartha coming back with an absolute stormer of a try.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was brilliant to execute with that kind of precision. When you're under pressure, you know that that's the final play of the game. You have to score to ensure that you give yourself an opportunity to draw the game. So for Vidyartha to have held their nerve in that kind of situation will probably give them a lot of confidence. Joseph's, those kind of draws, it's not the kind of result you want, isn't it? Because you probably felt you had the game in the bag, but then it's just been taken off you in that final few seconds of the game. So St. Joseph's will be disappointed with the result, but they may have gone into this game as underdogs as well. So to have come out with a draw may not be a bad result if you had given it to them at the start of the match. But the way the game went, they probably felt it was a missed opportunity. Vidyartha, they probably went into this game as favourites. So the fact that they eventually managed to pull off a draw the way they did will probably make them a little bit happy. But both teams at the end of the day will probably consider it a missed opportunity.
Well, nobody loses in a draw, but also nobody wins. But in the end, it was they got their bonus points as well, both teams. So that's something that they will be happy about. But in the end, not walking away with that W. So I'm not sure which team will be happier or sadder, but that's the way it works out. So we had the final match of the weekend on Sunday, Isipathana taking on Mahanama, and this was a bit of a scare as well. I think some of the Isipathanians with their heads in their hands at half time, wondering what's happening with Mahanama taking a shock lead early on, but once again emptying their bench, getting their experience on, and being a very professional team towards the end. They did what they had to do to win the game.
Yes, 14-12 lead at halftime in favour of Isipathana, but at that stage the game was very much in the balance. Mahanama definitely had their tails up as well. They just seem to have got confidence that they can beat this Isipathana team. But again, Shanika, as you very correctly said, teams like Isipathana are vastly experienced. They know how to absorb that pressure and how to execute under pressure, and that's exactly what they did. They did what they needed to in that second half, and eventually coming out with a relatively comfortable win.
Yes, so the top teams are not coming a cropper, and that was what was important for them, of course, but some really entertaining games. And what's more important for the league, for everyone who's a neutral watching other games, Abdullah, some outstanding tries. We've seen some nice long-range tries being scored, some wonderful display of skills with passing, nice switches, nice short passing, long passing, all of that. So it augurs well for the season.
Yes, in terms of entertainment, it was top-notch by all teams. They definitely put out a show. They were not afraid to express themselves. There was hardly any conservatism in terms of attack. But I think probably one area where coaches will probably need to look at is their defensive systems. I just felt sometimes kicking and chasing, they were all just a bit loose, isn't it? They were just, the players were running their own lines, doing their own things. So it's something that probably as the season progresses, coaches will need to tighten up, because especially the top teams, when they play against each other, defense is going to become a big part of it.
Sure.
So I'm sure that's an area where the coaches will keep an eye on as we see this tournament move forward.
So it's going to be an interesting one. Can the talented runners, the one-on-one broken field runners prevail, or will defensive patterns, defensive systems and defensive organization prevail? It'll be a nice battle to watch going ahead.
CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
Well, we've been talking about winners, losers and everything in between, but this is where you get to be a winner as well. Don't forget, at the end of the season, every one of you stands a chance to win 100,000 rupees in cash plus a set of tires for 50% off, 2 of those tires from CEAT. So that's going to be something that you're going to be looking forward to if you do own a car. So that's something that we are all looking forward to give you that cash. But to do that, what you have to do is make sure you log on to podhubmatchup.com and make sure you get predicting. Let's have a look back at predictions from last week and look forward to what the predictions have been for the matches this week. And based on what Abdullah and I have been discussing, I'm sure you might be able to inform your predictions a little bit better. Last week we had predictions versus reality, so let's look at exactly what those things look like. We had St. Thomas's versus Zahira coming up, and that is heavily favored in the Thormians' favor. But because Zahira over-delivered, can we find something that might raise the prediction level of Zahira going into this match against St. Thomas's? Maybe it's not exactly David meets Goliath. I think Zahira will be a little upset at being categorized as David, but let's see how that moves on. In other predictions also, we have St. Joseph's versus Thurston. St. Joseph's have been one of our favorite teams as far as the fan engagement is concerned, and St. Joseph's enjoys 90% fan support in their predictions. But because of that draw against Vidyartha, have the doubts been raised? Will the fan following for St. Joseph's drop a little bit? Let's wait and see whether they can live up to expectations. Of course, in terms of a mismatch, there's absolutely nobody who has predicted that Sri Sumangala are going to win against Royal, and I think those are good odds. That shows that you guys are sensible in your predictions and not just purely emotion driven. But will we find some diehard Sri Sumangala fans who come through and make a prediction for them? We have, of course, a match to be watched. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the bonus observations, prediction leaders at the moment, Royal Isipatana Trinity and St. Peter's, and no prizes for guessing why they are in the lead. Of course, you have a prize for guessing at the end. But the quiet disruptors are Zahira and DS. Are they able to make inroads in this second week's encounters? Struggling for support though, Ananda Mahanama, Thurston and Sri Sumangala. And I think we might see a shift in the momentum in this week's predictions as we go along, given the strong showing both Ananda and Mahanama showed in week 1. So that's something to look at. I think the Anandians have to come out of the woodwork and make sure that they get predicted, and make sure that they support their team off the field as well to see what they can predict on the field. And the match to watch, Wesley versus DS Serenayaka. This is going to be a very, very interesting game. The fan favorite, Wesley College, by far and away 85 to 95 support in most of their matchups, but DS Serenayaka building momentum after that win against St. Anthony's as well. So this match is going to be important because it's a balanced contest, not a lopsided matchup like Royal versus Sumangala or Isipatana versus Kingswood. And the Wesley has crowd support, but DS Serenayaka's performance suggests this is going to be a clash that most people are not expecting. The winner could break into the top tier of schools rugby, and that's going to be a real prize going into this match. So for now, the predictions stand. Wesley way ahead in the predictions. DS Serenayaka really have a lot of ground to make up, but let's see what the Dons fans can do to support their team. So that's our look back at the predictions from last week. Don't forget, you can predict on this week's games. Today is Wednesday, but you can predict until Friday 12 o'clock, and that's when we take the predictions of that week's fixtures off, and then you can keep predicting for the rest of the season as well. So good luck to all of you who are chasing the 100,002 tyre prize.
CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours.
And now our guest spotlight, courtesy of Singer Furniture. You'll see the two of us on our fancy new Singer seats. Tharindra Ratwatha on Rock and Roll. You're on CEAT Rock and Roll, and we're talking about schools rugby, of course, but we can't forget the fact that the Sri Lankan Tuskers are playing this week, and we have none other than the freshly appointed captain of Sri Lanka, Mr. Tharindra Ratwatha, joining us here on CEAT Rock and Roll. Thari, great to have you on the show, mate.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Congratulations on your appointment. It's the first time that you're leading the Sri Lankan 15 side. So how does that feel?
Oh, great honor. And really it's a privilege to be able to lead the Tuskers this year, and looking forward to the game.
So we've been talking to your physio also regularly on the show, and he's happy with how you've recovered from that knee injury that you had, and it meant that you missed one game against the New Zealand under-85s, but you did get one under your belt. So how do you feel that this Korea game is going to be different from that last tour?
Yeah, the rehab was really good. Majid really helped me get back into shape, and it was always very clear that 6 weeks was going to be the return date to be able to play competitively. So that was my target, and I really wanted to get a game under my belt before playing the Asia Rugby Championship, because of I'll get a little bit more rhythm. I'll get back into match fitness. It'll be an easy transition from there. So that was always, as far as the medical staff and Majid, myself, we always planned for that second game. I mean, it was unfortunate. I missed the Malaysia match as well, but if you can't play, you can't play. And thank God the boys did what they did that game and got us qualified. So
yeah, absolutely. And as a group, though, Tari, what has been the learnings from the New Zealand Under-85 tour?
Definitely attention to detail on various aspects of the game, the breakdown, set piece, body positioning, tackling, very, very basic stuff, but highly emphasized on the details. And we managed to get the New Zealand Under-85 rugby coaches their analysis of our team,
Right.
which also helped us, understand what our weaknesses are as a nation, where we really need to start building and really start concentrating on our coaching, and our skills really need to cater to that part of it, because we all know Sri Lanka rugby really loves to attack, and we'll have a kind of flair that resembles a lot of, I think they call us Fiji, the Asian
Fijians.
yeah. So, but we need to get the little things right first, so that we can be playing at that level consistently. So I think that was the biggest learning for us as a team.
And one thing they did talk about, the New Zealand team as well as their coaches, they did talk about the fact that conditioning was a factor. So have you all been doing a lot of that in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think it's a bit unfair to just harp on conditioning, because we had a huge season, a bunch of injuries that players like I think we were talking before about Adisha Veeratunga as well. So key players that also missed out. So that means we are bringing in a lot of people from like, I don't want to say second string, but people not playing regularly in the Sri Lanka outfit. So yes, definitely conditioning was a problem, and that's something we have been focusing on. But because we had a short turnaround after the New Zealand games, it has been way more attention to detail, but at a very high intensity. So it covers the conditioning part as well. So yeah, that's what we have been concentrating on the last 3 to 4 weeks.
So new captain, couple of new players coming into the squad as well, and also a new coach. Tari, we've got Rodney Gibbs coming in and taking over the Sri Lankan setup after the resignation of Sri Lanka's stalwart Sanat Martis. So how has that transition been for the team, and what are you all doing that you may not have done before?
It has been kind of a, I can't say smooth transition, but it has been a transition, and we are very privileged to be able to be coached by Rodney Gibbs. With his resume, I mean, it's actually a good opportunity for all the younger players to kind of learn how to go that extra step forward. Again, like I said, the attention to detail that coaches from New Zealand or wherever bring are things that we wouldn't really think about on a day-to-day. The small things, like, and which in how he goes about it is, those little changes, those little attention to detail actually affects the game plan on a whole,
Right.
and how he really wants us to play and how he sees us playing. So that is, I think, the adjustment, really going back to the basics, which I think we kind of neglect sometimes, and I think that is where we really need to spend more time, especially in the schools, clubs, so that we reinforce that attention to detail, so that when we come into this outfit in the future, it just comes naturally to us. Doesn't have to be coached again.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's something that we don't really take much notice of at the school level, at the club level, and you're trying to play a few seasons without going into that granular level of detail. But how long does it take for a playing group, Tari, to trust the coach that if I do this small thing, my game is going to improve? Have you seen that trust grow in the group?
Definitely. I think the boys are very receptive to the new coach and what he was trying to achieve. And we saw immediate changes in the mindset of the boys, how they approach training. I suppose it is because it's a little different. It's a different approach altogether, and I think that kind of broke that mundane or that monotonous flow to trainings, because it's something new to learn. So I think that's how the trust built, the motivation, the enthusiasm lifted. I suppose that I think more than the trust, the enthusiasm around training lifted, and that was the biggest thing.
And how's the mindset of the group going into this Korea game? Are you all really positive? Are we going to see the best Sri Lankan performance yet?
Well, that's the plan. Hopefully that will turn out the way it is. The boys are fully excited, but we're taking it a day at a time. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves sometimes. So we just need to pull back, stick to the process, and come guns blazing on Friday.
And from a team point of view, Tari, any real surprises, any new people that we need to look out for that are coming into the team, or has that not been fully decided as yet?
Not fully decided as of yet. I think the spectators, if they want, they just have to come on Friday and see. I'm sure they will. And for you running out as captain, it's going to be a brilliant occasion, your first match here on home soil as well. So what are you looking forward to get out of the day? Oh, I mean, like I said, it's a huge honor and a privilege, and I'm tasked with captaining a side, a very fairly young side, full of motivation and enthusiasm, and it's a huge honor for me, representing my family and where I come from, my school as well. And it's a proud moment for me and my family that I'm getting the honor to captain Sri Lanka on Friday in front of Sri Lankans. So I think that's the biggest thing I could ever ask for. So yeah, on a personal note, yes, I'm really excited and looking forward to it.
Fantastic. We are looking forward to it as well, Tari, and I know everyone watching is going to be there at the racecourse to support Tarinda and the Sri Lankan team taking on Korea in a World Cup qualifier. If they win this and if they beat the UAE and Hong Kong, Sri Lanka may even get to a World Cup. That's a big step, Tari, but it's what we're working towards, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, that's the target.
Fantastic. So see you guys there, and see you there as well, Tari. All the best to the team.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Some things are meant to be felt, not just seen good. At Singha, every curve, every detail is an invitation to experience craftsmanship that transcends time. Crafted with absolute love from materials chosen for their grace and designed to complement the art of living well. Your home is a reflection of your story. Singha is there in the quiet moments and the lasting memories. Built to endure. As time passes, they even feel more closer to you. Quiet luxury, lasting craftsmanship for a stylish lifestyle. Singha Furniture.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Recovery Room on CEAT Ruck and Roll. We have Majid with us as usual, who, if rugby was Formula One, Majid would be the chief engineer. Is that a correct analogy to make?
That's a bit of a stretch, but yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, because your body is the most important thing when you're playing rugby. Of course, skills, conditioning, all of that really important. But how you look after your body, how you make sure you take care of it is just as important as Formula One teams just making sure they get their tire changes right, or their oil right, or their flaps right, or whatever it might be. So it is the most important skill that we have to understand that rugby players need to take into consideration. And do you find that there's enough of that, Majid? Do you find players respecting their bodies enough, realizing that they need to take care of themselves?
To be perfectly honest, it has been improving over the time, and more education. The coaches are more educated as well in terms of player management and welfare, as well as the doctors who have come in now are a lot more knowledgeable in terms of how you manage specific sports more proactively. And the athletes also are willing to take more knowledge in now with more information out there. They know that there's a lot more that they can take in. So players are likely to get more out of it right now compared to what we saw a few years ago.
Great. And today we're going to be talking about return to play protocols, which apply regardless of what your injury is. You could have hurt your ankle, you could have hurt your head. The same protocol, the different protocols will apply, but you still do have to have protocols that apply. So back in Abdullah's and my day, and even senior to that, Majid, it would be considered a sign of bravery almost to go in with a cropped knee or a bandaged head or a broken shoulder or something like that. This is what we did. But that mindset is changing now, right?
Yes, I think that also is through information out there and more knowledge about an injury, how it happens and what specific type of injury you have. Because if you're having a fracture, there's nothing I can do, nothing the doctor can do. It's more of just giving it time. And if it's another soft tissue injury, like a hamstring, quad, even a shoulder muscle tear, that is something that will require you to manage it more accurately so that you can come back to sport a lot more faster. And very common injuries that we can't manage is something like an ankle, which is quite bad, like a grade 3 ankle, which we can't really do too much to get you back in a week. So those are the injuries that we still find trouble with, how we can manage that and get the players back onto the field.
So talk us through the return to play protocols. Let's start with maybe a concussion, because that's one of the popular topics that World Rugby is really talking about. So tell us how you would treat and how you would observe and how you'd bring back someone with a concussion.
Yeah. So concussion is very specific to the level of division you're playing at. So let's say the upcoming Sri Lanka Korean game, we're going to have HIA, where we can take the player out, do an assessment, and then put the player back in. Whereas in school rugby, we go under a protocol where it's recognize and remove. So if the doctor or if the referee or if the physio who is on field sees that there's a player who is suspected of a concussion, it is our responsibility as a medical provider to take the player out of the game. So that doesn't go under blue card per se, unless there's clear signs of a concussion, right? But in return to play, immediately on the field, we do a few tests to see if the player is okay, and there are a checklist of signs that we have to run through to make sure that the player is okay and cleared to play. And if they don't show any red flags or even yellow flags, which is maybe or may not be concussed, then they can be played, right? So that is the protocol we go in on match day. But then after a player is confirmed as who has had a concussion, it is mandatory by World Rugby saying that you have to wait 21 days. So the 21 day is a mandatory requirement, especially if you're under 19. So if you're under 19, you have no HIA. So if you have an under 19 player playing at a national level as well, they have no say in whether they can do a head injury assessment and come back to play. They are directly taken out of the safety of the player's long-term health.
So you're looking at a pretty long layoff there, Majid, if you have been confirmed with a concussion. 3 weeks could be the make or break of a season. If it's one of your best players, you're losing him for 3 games. That's a huge impact on the coach and the team. So obviously it's not a popular return to play protocol, but how is it enforced, and has there been any situations where you've seen where parents have come and said, we don't want this protocol imposed, or players saying, I'm okay to play, please play me? How do you handle those situations?
So usually the World Rugby guidelines has put as much as possible restrictions onto a team's ability to get the player onto the field. So if the player is confirmed as concussed, there's a medical protocol which you have to go through the medical director of that tournament.
Right.
So usually the school boys, they'll have to get there. Most of the time it is at the sports medicine, the sports unit in the National Hospital. You have to meet the doctor there and then get a clearance. Once you get the clearance, you can get back to play.
Right.
So the school has no influence on that directly. So sometimes you have instances where this player was treated differently, this player was treated differently. It comes to the same argument we have and the enjoying argument we have with referees as well.
Yeah.
Why was this not given and why was this given? So people do have human errors as well, but under the guidelines and player safety, we try to minimize external factors as possible. That's the whole point with having a medical guideline, so that we don't have external factors influencing the players return to play.
And what about protocols for other injuries like soft tissue injuries or maybe an ACL reconstruction or something like that? How do you manage those, Majid?
Again, there's a lot more awareness on general timelines, especially if you have a physio with the team who is tracking injury data and generally gets an average on how long an injury would take. We do have scientific research to suggest that, okay, certain injuries are going to take this amount of time on an average. So we just give a ballpark to the coaches and the players, okay, saying that you'll be returning to play maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, like that. And then within those ranges, we try to get them back to playing as fast as possible. And soft tissue injury changes from the place you have the injury as well. So like if you're a forward and you have a shoulder injury, soft tissue shoulder injury, then you would be a bit reluctant to putting them back onto the play. Whereas if it's a back who has minimal contact, then you would either make that calculated risk to put him back to the play. Same with like ankles, hamstrings. All those have a set guideline of time where they could get back to sport with a proper rehab program.
Okay. And how much is the player involved in these discussions?
The players, since they are schoolboys, they don't get to influence how we manage it, but they will get their say, and it is their opinion that matters the most. And what they can do as much as they can is do the off-field discipline of taking care of the injury, not aggravating it, doing your exercises, doing your treatment, maintaining your upper body strength if you have low body injury. So that is from their side, that shows that they are committed to getting back onto the field. So if the player shows that commitment and their injury is improving, then we'll most likely get them onto the field as fast as possible. If we see them that they're not sleeping well, they're not taking the right nutrition, if they're not doing the rehab, then it is that player's responsibility, and that player has to take accountability if he gets late to get back into playing.
So commitment and discipline are key?
100%. So I think our recently retired captain Nigel Ratwater would also say that that is the most important if you're a rugby player, to make sure that it's not just the on-field discipline, it's the off-field discipline that matters as well.
Well, there you heard it straight from the horse's mouth. Majid talking to us about recovering from injury and getting back, what the protocols are to get back to play as soon as you possibly can. And as much as some of it is in God's hands, or whoever you like to call's hands, most of it is with you, discipline and commitment. Thanks a lot, Majid. See you next week.
All right, thank you.
Hearts racing fast, we feel alive for miles and miles. Let your spirit fly. There's no turning back. The road is yours.
German-engineered tyres for Sri Lankan roads. CEAT car radials. The road is yours.
Well, we've looked back at what happened last week, and we're looking ahead to what's going to happen on week 2 of this Dialogue Schools Rugby League on CEAT Ruck and Roll. And when it comes to tyres, CEAT is a name everyone trusts. Over 1.2 million tyres sold every year, and now in over 110 countries, including the US and Europe. No wonder, Abdullah, that they're Sri Lanka's #1 tyre brand.
Absolutely, and it's just great to have them as part of our main sponsors on this show, isn't it?
Absolutely. Let's look ahead at what's going on in week number 2. We have St. Anthony's versus St. Peter's. That's a battle of the Saints. Going to be an interesting one. Some good broken field runners in both teams, Abdullah. So I think it probably is going to be a high-scoring affair. Are St. Peter's going to regroup and run away with it, or are St. Anthony's going to improve?
Yet you probably fancy St. Peter's going into that game as favourites. But the Anthonians will be a bit hurt after that loss against DS last week. So playing at home, they'll definitely want to put in a really good performance. It's going to be close, and as you said, Shanak, it'll probably be a high-scoring affair because both teams have wonderful backs in their arsenal. But it could probably come to who manages to win the battle up front. And whoever manages to do that, I think, will probably pull this game off.
Let's wait and see how that one works out. We have Kingswood versus Isipathana. Now, this is going to be an interesting match, Abdullah, because Kingswood are up at home. Isipathana have to travel, and they haven't travelled all season, so it's the first time they'll be playing a match up in Kandy. And Kingswood will take a lot of heart and confidence from the performance they put out against St. Thomas's. So this match, I would fancy, go down to the wire as well.
Yes, I think that will most definitely be the case because the Kingswood, just 2 matches last week's match, as well as we've got to keep that pre-quarter final game against Royal as well. Both occasions they had to come down to Colombo, and they really pushed those two teams right down to the wire. So playing at home, they will definitely, I think, be very confident against Isipatana, who also had to really bring in their best performance against Mahanama. So I think Kingswood will definitely fancy their chances. But again, that Isipatana's experience in crucial moments could probably keep them ahead in that encounter.
Yeah. Sri Sumangala versus Royal, I'm going to say that Royal is going to run away with this one as well. They would have seen what Sri Sumangala have to offer and what they did against Trinity, but that Royal backline looks a little bit too strong at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. But I think Royal will probably want a bit more out of that encounter as well. They'd probably like to see their forwards putting a bit more of a dominant performance than they did last week. Also, it'll be interesting to see whether they will continue to give some of their fringe players a run, or whether they will try and settle into a combination. Yeah. So, a lot more than the result riding on that game for Royal.
And we have Ananda versus Science, two teams in red, and you think you have to say Ananda are going to be firm favourites going into this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought they were really good against St. Peter's. Unfortunately, just their three quarters couldn't keep the Peterite backs at bay. But I think against Science College, they'll probably be physically too superior. And you'd probably fancy Ananda to not have a win in that game.
And let's look at the other fixtures that are coming up. We have Mahanama taking on Dharmaraja. That's going to be a really close game as well. Mahanama looking for their first win of the season.
Yes, and I think probably back Mahanama as well. Dharmaraja have come down twice to Colombo this season and just haven't been able to get their game sorted out. So probably Mahanama to pull that game off.
Over 10 years since Dharmaraja became league champions under Rojan Hettiarachi, looking to regain their glory days, but it seems some time away. Thurston versus St. Joseph's, the Josephians looking to recover from that draw, and you think that this is going to be an easy one for them.
Yes, considering what we saw from Thurston last week, I think you'll probably find the Josephians will probably have their tails up to a certain extent, having managed to get a draw up in Kandy. So you definitely fancy them to pull that game off.
And then you have what I think are the two matches of the week. DS Serenayaka taking on Wesley. Wesley, as you said, lots of game breakers in their side, Abdullah, and they're going to have rely on those guys on the outside. But DS Serenayaka have a mongrel about them up front. They have the ability to be really abrasive. So it's going to be a nice contrast in styles.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as far as Wesley are concerned, the key is going to be that battle up front. If they can neutralize the DS Serenayaka 8, then I think they've definitely got the players out wide who can cause problems. And position, as far as Wesley, is going to be the key for them. So if the forwards can give some good, decent position to the backs, then I think they have got it in them to overcome DS Serenayaka.
St. Thomas is, of course, probably one of the best teams that they've produced in the last few years, and they went very close against Trinity in that knockout tournament as well. But judging by their performance last week, St. Thomas's are a confident side, Abdullah. They're a side that are mentally not as strong as I think they would like to be, because leading against Kingswood, they weren't able to really put their foot on the throat and kill that game off. So Zahira will travel to Mount Lavinia with a little bit of confidence.
Yes, with quite a bit of confidence, I'd say. And I think from St. Thomas's, probably what could work for them is it's probably the wake-up call they needed. Yeah. They probably realized that it's not going to just happen. They've got to ensure that they put in a 70-minute performance. And I'm sure Coach Anrandu Walpola and the rest of his coaching staff would have drilled that into them. But Zahir, on the other hand, they will definitely fancy their chances that they can go to Mount Lavinia and get the result they need.
And we have one more game up for decision, and this is going to be an entertaining one as well. Trinity versus Vidyartha is going to be Trinity's defense versus Vidyartha's attack. And after coming through in one of those really unbelievable performances with one of the tries of the season already, just in week one that Vidyartha scored, they will fancy running Trinity close.
Yes, most definitely. And we know these Kandy schools, when they play against each other, how they lift their performance. So a lot was expected from Vidyartha this season. They started off with a draw, and if they can get that scalp against Trinity, it'll just set their season up for the rest of 2025 brilliantly. But Trinity, on the other hand, they have a lot of quality in their team this year, and if they put their best 15 out on the park, it's going to be very tough for Vidyartha.
Yes, so they'll have to make a call as to whether how seriously they're going to take this Vidyartha threat and how seriously they're going to take this long-term season as well, because don't forget they've got the season and then they've got their most important match after the season ends as well. So a lot for the Trinity coaches to think about. We didn't really have an upset last week, but I think we will have one this week.
Yes, just going by the fixture, it's bound to happen sooner than later, isn't it? So let's wait and see. But overall, I think there's going to be tries galore, and all spectators, all fans, all rugby lovers are going to have a wonderful weekend of rugby.
Certainly are. We'll talk about it next week when we come back on Ruck and Roll.
CEAT Car Radials. The road is yours. Singer Furniture for stylish lifestyles.
Thanks very much for joining us on Season 2, Episode 3 of CEAT Ruck and Roll. Don't forget, we have an outstanding weekend of rugby, and that weekend of rugby will start on Friday with Sri Lanka taking on Korea at the Racecourse Grounds. Make sure you log on to the PodHub YouTube channel and, of course, the PodHub Facebook page and watch the show, and make sure you get supporting Sri Lanka as well. And don't forget your predictions on podhubmatchup.lk. Have a rock and rolling weekend.